welcome to the first Friday Cafe of 2022. We're thrilled you're with us. We've missed you. So I'm Judy Carson, if we haven't met, and I'm with the Department of Education, where I oversee school, family, community partnerships. And I'm joined by my colleague and friend, as always, Betsy Laborious, who's the director of Connecticut's statewide family engagement center called Connecticut School Family Partnerships. And we are thrilled to bring this topic to you today to launch 2022. I think in our time and place, it is right on point. And we have some fabulous presenters and a really interesting experience for you this morning that I myself am excited to participate in. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Betsy Laborious, who is the ambassador of relationships for Friday Cafe. She's going to be introducing today's conversation catalysts. Betsy.
Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you. We're thrilled in this time of a lot of different multiple priorities and different kinds of challenges that you continue to support and want to be part of our network. So without further ado, I am really going to introduce our West Hartford thought leaders this morning in our conversation catalysts. From West Hartford, the Office of Equity Advancement Team and the West Hartford Public Schools. Today, the conversation, the work that has been done will be led by Dr. Roszena Haskins. She's the Director of Equity Advancement, and Dr. Scott Ratchford. He's the Coordinator for Equity Advancement and Family Engagement. So we've been hearing about this work, we know about this work, and we're thrilled to have you here today, West Hartford. So I'm going to hand it over to, I believe, Dr. Haskins, or is it Dr. Ratchford? Yes?
Thank you, Judy, for framing the principles and values, and Betsy for the introduction. Wow, what an amazing turnout. Welcome to this Friday Cafe session where we're focused on family partnerships that promote equity. As Betsy said, I'm Roszena Haskins. One edit, I'm the lucky Director of Equity Advancement for the West Hartford Public Schools. And in just a moment, my team of district equity engineers, as I call them, will introduce themselves. And we'll go in the order so you've met me. Scott, you want to reintroduce yourself?
So, hello, everybody. Some familiar names I see in the list of participants today. I'm proud and happy to be among you. I feel very grateful for this whole Friday Cafe series and just to join in the conversation. So I'm Dr. Scott Ratchford, for those I don't know, Coordinator for Equity Advancement and Family Engagement. Appreciate the time to be here today.
Following up, my name is Shayna Gray. I am the Family Services Social Worker working on the Equity Advancement Department.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Amy Yarbrough, and I'm the Open Choice Family Engagement Liaison.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott P. Dunn. I'm the principal here at Wolcott Elementary School.
Good morning, everyone. So happy to have everybody here this morning to talk about parent engagement. As we are talking today, I'm Jocelyn Tamburello Noble. I'm a world language supervisor, and I'm also a parent in the district.
Good morning. My name is Nordia Napier. I'm a parent partner with the school district.
Good morning, all. My name is Mike Keogh, and I am a parent partner for the school district. Thank you.
Thank you, team. It's an honor to be here with all of you. You know, individually, they are uniquely gifted, inspiring, and courageous. And collectively, I hope you'll see that they are dynamic and they really are the backbone of our district's equity-focused family partnership work, where our motto is clear paths, bright futures, no limits. Our time with you today is short, but we have some outcomes that we hope to achieve, and we will leave some space for your reflection and questions. But today we hope that you will gain some practical takeaways or some do now ideas that you can implement tomorrow in your settings. And so you may have opportunities in your own backyard, as we found that we had, but we weren't seeing them so clearly due to some not so obvious barriers and obstacles. So again, we'll provide some space to reflect on existing practice and tools that you may have, and hopefully build on more ways that we reimagine schools, education, and partnership. Scott, we can go on to the next slide. Because you've met our team, and you know, briefly we'll also share, I'd like to share like who we are as a district community and who we serve. We are we're west of the Connecticut River, as you know, and we recognize the gifts of indigenous land in which we are situated. Let's go on to the next slide. Here is a snapshot of our demographics. Our students of color make up about over 40% of our student population, whereas students of 2 or more races did not exist in a chart like this 10 years ago. They now have a way to be more accurately represented. In our district, we have such a beautiful tapestry of languages too. We have over 70 different home languages spoken, and our top 5 languages reflect that diversity and those changes, those growing changes in our culture and community. A decade ago, Nepali was not represented on this chart, and now we have a little over 100 Nepali native speakers. Next. So West Hartford is diverse in socioeconomics too. People often think of West Hartford as, you know, the affluent suburbs, but we have students that live in multi-million-dollar homes and students that live in low income or rent-controlled developments. And unfortunately, we have students who have been displaced and declared homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act. Our free and reduced lunch participation, I will say, is 27% today, but I suspect that number has increased, but it's not realized in our data yet or our system because, you know, in COVID times, federal grant funding has allowed us to provide free breakfast and lunch to all children for the past 2 years. And so we're not seeing as many applications come in for that. But West Hartford has been coined and characterized as a destination district because of our high quality programs and services, and especially for our English language learners and those with special needs. I'm going to toss this over to you, Scott.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Haskins. So, but we are a destination district and we are very proud of our district, but like many districts locally, national, in the state and then nationally, we have challenges. We have areas that we know that we need to tackle around gaps that speak to equity issues. And these are just some of the various gaps that we've identified. And as a district team, we really grappled with what we can do to address these important issues that really speak to the heart of all of our work. And ourselves some very important questions as we began to look at our mission and what we owe to all of our children, all of our families. And some important questions really sort of drove our work. So we asked ourselves, what are our goals for all children? What does true equity look like? It's one thing to talk about equity. It's another thing to actually begin to identify what that means and what our goals translate to in terms of actions, what it looks like in the classroom, and what it is that would tell us that we've met those goals. So what does it mean to be an equitable educator? So maybe to start us off this morning, since our focus is around equity, if you could put into the chat the answer to the question that we've really phrased and framed for ourselves and for all that we work with: what is equity? So to help you, all children will what? What would it look like in your mind? So if you, our leaders and our educators all tried to answer this question as well. And where we found ourselves is we found ourselves really trying to identify some clear accountability measures that all children need to be seen, valued, and heard. It's important for us to ensure that kids all feel welcomed in our schools, all feel like these are their schools. They all have access to all opportunities, regardless of what those opportunities might be. That every child should be able to engage in whatever it is that West Hartford and our schools offer, and that they should all maximize their potential. We really try to cleanly identify these key areas and ensure that when we talk about equity, we know that we are trying to land in a place where we're providing these opportunities, these outcomes for all kids. So this being the Friday Cafe event, I've attended many over the years, and I know this group. Our focus is around families, and so we as a West Hartford team also started to look at what equity looks like for families, and what all families will have as equitable outcomes. So we're going to ask you to, for a few moments, get into some small groups and address a question that we have been trying to answer for ourselves. I love the answers that people had for what equity looks like on, when we're looking at kids, but why equity? Why, when we talk family engagement, why is it an issue that really is an equity issue? So we would like for people, when we get into this first breakout, to address a very sort of pointed question, one that we continue to ask ourselves: how family partnership is an issue of equity. Ultimately, where we landed in West Hartford is in a place where we believe that family partnership is not really separate, and nor should it be separate from any of the work we're doing around equity. That ultimately, that we saw that what we want for children is really reflected in what we want for our families. And if we don't include our families, that we don't really ultimately lead to more equitable outcomes. So to help all of our educators to think through what that looks like, we actually built a model that is an equity model that speaks to the various aspects of our work that hopefully will lead to what we want for kids. And so we have 4 big areas that we are trying to help people to think about and focus on in their work. The first being what is at the heart of good schools, which is high quality pedagogy. What does good instruction look like that meets the needs of all kids? Secondly, that all of our educators are working toward being culturally competent, that they understand the needs of all children and all families across all the areas of difference, whether those be cultural, racial, and all the various identity groups that we all work with. That we also wanted to ensure that all children and all families, and actually all staff, understand what good social and emotional regulation and management looks like, and that we actually directly try to incorporate that into our work so that kids aren't just seen as working toward academic outcomes, that we're trying to help them. And it seems particularly important now with all that we're experiencing with COVID, but that we look at them as whole children, and that we try to work toward their social and emotional well-being as well. And then family partnership is one of our 4 core areas for equity. And if you look at this model, that each of these areas overlap, that we can't do one without the other if we're going to ultimately lead toward equitable outcomes for kids, that our families need to be partners with us. And so, Jocelyn, if you could help people understand, we built a vision statement to hold ourselves accountable.
Thanks, Scott. So in West Hartford Public Schools, we have an equity and anti-racism vision, and our vision really speaks to what we stand for in terms of looking at outcomes for being an anti-racist organization. So at this point, I'm going to ask Dr. Ratchford to click on our soundboard there.
I'm sorry, what am I clicking on?
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was LinkedIn. So,
no, it's not.
Okay, so I apologize. So we, the members of West Hartford Public Schools, dedicate ourselves to the pursuit of equity. Equitable schools are those that value and honor all in our community as unique individuals of maximizing their true potential. And we make a solemn promise to identify and dismantle all elements of systemic racism and historical inequities. We vow to clear paths with a relentless duty to the traditionally marginalized groups, and we pledge to partner with all families in the service of the success of each child. So our last line especially speaks to parent partnership and how integral parents and caregivers are in terms of developing true partnership.
So linked within your PowerPoint, you'll find on that slide, you'll find an audio recording, that's what Jocelyn was referring to, of the voices of our students embracing the equity vision statement. And it is great to hear your voice, and even more powerful to hear our students speak it, because as they speak about it, they're holding us accountable. They're asking questions about what does this mean? And so it's got to be more than just words, it's got to be action. And so on this slide, this is just a visual of our educational equity policy 1800. And although it was adopted in spring of 2021, it's a reminder of our values, of our vision and our values. So our vision frames and drives our work, but this work was codified last spring by the members of our Board of Education. And it wasn't work that just started in the last year, although the research intensified in the past year that led up to the review and adoption. It's been work that's been ongoing. We'll continue to build it. It will continue to evolve, but you'll see that family and community partnership that's central to this work. I think it's a great time for me to just take a pause and say that we have so many, even in this space here, there's so many families and parent partners and parent-led organizations that helped us to shape this. They're helping us to really look at how this is operationalized, how they see themselves and their family situated in it. And so I want to get a nod to probably over 20 formal parent partner, parent-led organizations that are even in this room today. I know that PLTI is represented here, and the EDI, our equity, diversity, inclusion groups of West Hartford were very instrumental in this. And so I'll just say that shortly you will hear from some parents who have helped us to get to this place of formal acknowledgement and accountability of equity in deed and in action.
So our school systems and teachers are drivers in family partnership, and that's really important to note. Educators and families have strengths and limitations, so building the capacities are important to empower teachers and families to have effective partnerships. So most of you are familiar with the dual capacity framework developed by Dr. Karen Mapp. And there is a version 2 that came out in 2019 that is linked in your presentation also. And I would recommend taking a look at that. It's basically the same core, but it's designed in a slightly different way, which is helpful. So this framework is a great tool or compass, as Dr. Mapp says, that can be used to guide schools in their partnership work. Capacity is that ability or power to do, experience, or understand something. And there are many types of capacities listed in the framework, but on this slide, we've pulled out a few of the skills and abilities that we need to consider in doing the work. Regarding teacher capacities, how to build relationships. We had some of that conversation in our breakout room. How do I get to know my families, their beliefs around education, and their child's strengths, interests, and areas of challenges? How do I communicate as a partner? How do I best connect with the family? Who and which family members do I connect with? What is the format and what time of day and what language? And then also how to value and utilize parents' strengths. What are the strengths of and the knowledge of the families in our community? And how do families want to be involved? And in terms of families building capacities is to know how to navigate the school. How does the school operate? What is the school's expectations of us as a family? How to support the learning at home of their student? What is my child learning? What training and materials are available for families? What support services are available and for whom? And to add from our breakout group also is, what is the safety in asking that question of the school system? And then to communicate student strengths and needs. How do I share my goals for my child? Who do I share them with? How do I advocate for their needs? So the work of building capacity requires stretching ourselves and our existing systems to welcome families into the network. And also, it's important to take a moment to check our assumptions and biases as we do this work. And ultimately, it's the school responsibility to drive the capacity building of the teachers and the families.
So as we look at, so now what, how is family partnership a lever for equity? And as we look at what does family partnership look like in practice, we fully acknowledge the need that our educators have in terms of continuing to understand really a dual capacity framework and understanding that parents and caregivers are the primary educators of their children, but also understanding the limitations of need for continuous professional learning, continuous understanding, and really to come to a common understanding of what true partnership looks like. So although we look at this as a vision of where we want to become as an anti-racist organization, we still acknowledge the room to grow for both our educators and our parents in terms of truly understanding how to best service and support their individual child or student.
Okay, so Wolcott School, as I mentioned earlier to our breakout group, we're one of 11 elementary schools in the district, and we were fortunate to be one of the schools a few years ago to participate in a district pilot, which was called Welcoming Schools and continues to be called Welcoming Schools. And part of that was having a trained team of individuals. These would be members from another school, parents, district, and community members to come to Wolcott and to be able to examine over a few hour period tour of to what degree is the school welcoming. Can we tell by being a visitor what the school values and how they value partnerships and families. And that was a terrific opportunity for us at Wolcott because we had been in our own fishbowl to really, through an unbiased lens, learn from others, not only for them to tell us what our strengths were, but also some possible areas of continued growth in terms of how do we welcome and support our partnerships with parents and caregivers. We took that feedback as part of our Welcoming Schools Committee to really allow us to pause and reflect as a school committee on how to build upon that definition and understanding of equity and how it relates to our partnerships with families. You'll see some pictures here. We had actually done this prior to the visit from the trained team for Welcoming Schools, when we were thinking about when parents and caregivers visit, whether to pick up their child or they're waiting for a meeting to begin, we really had no welcoming area. It was such a basic need that, quite frankly, just came to us quickly in terms of let's create that comfortable waiting space for parents and caregivers to wait for that meeting to begin to pick up their child for that afternoon appointment. The Welcoming Schools visit really provided us the next level of that work in terms of creating partnerships, where you'll see the TV there, the TV screen is that the feedback we received is, while these families here are waiting, why not project all the terrific things that are happening in and out of the classroom at Wolcott School, the classroom learning, the events coming up. It would certainly provide some information and some connection for those people waiting. Also, feedback we received was, let's turn that not just into a lobby, but really into what we call now a family resource center. We have to the immediate left, you can kind of see the table to the left of a lot of information that is from the Bridge in West Hartford. It's also a list of the adults at Wolcott in terms of their role and contact information if you need to speak to certain people. So we really wanted to turn that not only into a welcoming space, but an informative one. So then where do we find the time with all of this work? So the important work, that's the next slide, thank you. The Welcoming Schools Committee work at Wolcott really didn't see this as new work or more work. It was just rather looking at through a different lens from the perspective and viewpoint of families at Wolcott. We shifted our thought and our work in terms of let's operate all of our decision making from now on if this is a new family to Wolcott and or is this a family in need? How would they know how to partner, where to go, and with whom. And once we made that critical shift in terms of family partnerships, it really did change and leverage our work. We first look at our orientation night and our curriculum nights. How do we engage families in less of a stand to deliver presentation and maybe more of an interactive experience based on need? So the Welcoming Schools team transformed that evening into two portions. Time in the classroom, of course, with the teacher to connect with that teacher in the first few weeks of school, but also offering a booth expo type format in the cafeteria where parents and caregivers went to certain booths that most aligned with their needs, whether it was establishing a family buddy system for a new family, transportation needs, or perhaps language translation. Welcoming families.
This meeting is being recorded.
We also transformed to include common language and messaging about resources. So for instance, all families in West Hartford, and I would imagine in all school communities, receive a welcome letter from their teacher over the summer. What we wanted to do was make sure there was common language in there about where families can go for certain resources. Two such resources that emanated from our Welcoming Schools group were the Eagle's Nest. The Eagle's Nest is an area of the building with new or gently worn clothing where families can either donate or they can come in and take what they need. We have the same with our Woke It Free Little Library, which is extra books for students, all genres, all levels, that's located outside of our school. So these are two things that we wanted to not only provide to families, but make sure we were communicating about all of those. And all of those efforts and those to come in the future are really all high quality practices that help us build upon those collaborative relationships that are built on trust. And with those practices and those relationships, they positively influence student learning and also growth. So how do we retool and reframe all of this? The old shift was, we know what we're doing. Here's something for you to look at. Send your child in, and we will make these assumptions that they are clean, fed, and rested. And of course, that's a very antiquated one and actually not a realistic one. So that shifts to, how do we partner at this point? Having the families, the parents, and the caregivers help to be a part of this process of supporting their children. So when I think of Welcoming Schools' current efforts, we talked this year, we're shifting our questionnaire for families. When we send that summer letter from teachers in the summer, we also are working this year on creating a streamlined form. And that is a great opportunity on that form for a parent to share about their child's strengths and interests and needs. That's something we've always done in the past. What we've added now in that questionnaire is really focusing it from a lens of equity to expand on the needs within the questionnaire, on what specifically do you need? Do you need language translation? Perhaps it's transportation to and from school events, such as parent-teacher conferences. Is it holiday gift assistance? Is it winter tire support for children? Also, would you be interested in serving on some of these key committees at school? That's separate from our PTO events. These are things like Safe School Climate and our Equity and Diversity Council. So that's really been helpful as well. And also in terms of communicating with families, we've shifted to the Some More website. I think we probably all grew up, or perhaps we have children where we receive that bi-weekly or monthly newsletter. And shifting to this Some More online allows us to translate into all the languages that we have. Now at Wilcott, we're so fortunate to have over 24 languages spoken by students and their families. So that monthly newsletter to Some More, plus the weekly emails that I send to all families, we have the opportunity, and we do so, to shift into those languages so then all family have complete access. And then obviously that's very intentional to be able to create that connection. We also have been focusing on how can we support learning at home. And what we've been doing this year through a grant through the foundation of the West Hartford Public Schools and also some outsourced resources is we have been creating a library of math games and activities that first are experienced in the classroom, and then we share with families through a sign-out system, just like our library books in the library. They're housed in the library, and they're the exact ones that are in the classroom. So families can support their children academically through these lend-out math kits, which we also have included a exact replica at the Hannock Center in town. So those are some of the partnership efforts at Wolcott, and a lot of our West Hartford, all of our West Hartford Public Schools that serve as those valuable levers for equity. And it's exciting work that never ends. And the great thing is once we have tooled something, we wind up finding something else that we didn't know. And what we know is this exciting work that won't end. We just want to continue to look at it through the lens of, if families needed something, would they know where to go and how to communicate that? And the more transparent and the more open and overt we are with that at events and in our writing, we know that we'll be able to continue to build upon those trusts with families.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dunn. Love the work that you're doing on behalf of all of our families. So we also in our work, we really try to offer and build a clear path for families to be our partners in terms of how it is that we work together on common efforts. How is it that we build systems where our families are right in the work with us? And so we're hoping to offer you some examples of where, when we've opened the doors for families to be side by side with us, that they have really just grown the work that we can do for all of our kids. So we're hoping to offer you some examples here, just a few of the examples of where our parents are in partnership with us. And so, Nuria, if you don't mind.
Good morning. Yeah, the biggest takeaway in partnering with staff at West Hartford Public Schools was just their vulnerability for me, being vulnerable, because this is not an easy situation. They're coming from their lens, especially, being able to plan lessons. That's their forte most of the time. So having some of us parents, say, I don't know if that was a good idea. You kind of need to be vulnerable, because there's times that, just from a parent aspect, we did need to just say, hey, I don't think that would make students of color feel well. So in terms of the curriculum writing, we were very involved, at least on the middle school level. We worked closely with the team. It was a small team, but we met regularly. And, the staff shared the lesson plans with us pretty frequently. We had access to the Google Docs, so nothing was really hidden from us. So we were able to see kind of where they were coming from in terms of building the plans. And also we were allowed to give input on what should be added, a few things that could be tweaked here and there, and major things. And having those conversations, being open, to me was the biggest takeaway. Because again, you could put together things. A lot of us come with that background, we have skills, but to be vulnerable is sometimes hard. And that was the biggest thing that I loved about the group, that we could be a little bit vulnerable with each other and respectfully have conversations and not be offended. Because as a parent, we're going to see things one way, and as an educator, they're going to see it another way. And then as a parent of color, which I am, and some of us on the panel were, we just had different experiences that some of the teachers who were white may not have taken into consideration all the time. And it wasn't neglectful that they didn't take it into consideration. We just all have different experiences and insight. So I just love the fact that the team was able to do that. And that to me is just the biggest takeaway, regardless of how you collaborate, is that vulnerability and being open to parents, sharing information, having meetings, sharing the progress in the curriculum. That was another great aspect, and inviting other parents to participate and not just leaning on certain parents only, but being open to having other parents partner up as well, and growing the community and having the community partnership expand. So those were the two big things for me that was great about this partnership, and why it continues to grow to this day. And I think it'll sustain because that foundation is there of just respect and vulnerability.
Appreciate you very much. All right, Dr. Haskins.
I'll be brief because I stole my own thunder in the earlier slide on the equity policy, but I will say that this policy aimed to address our past shortcomings that parents helped us to see. It helped us to really look deeper and to, remove our blind spots and ensure that it represented those who have felt most unheard, unseen, and underrepresented. And I will add that in your PowerPoint in the curriculum resource block that Nordia just spoke to, there's also an audio video of one of our parent partners. Sorry to be off screen, one of our parent partners and a testimonial of that partnership. It's a member of one of our co-founding members of our parent-led EDI group. And just before I stop talking, thank you, Scott, for acknowledging Shawnee's question and for the group in the chat box.
And so another aspect of where we have partnerships with our families, again, to Nordia's point, this work requires a certain level of vulnerability, that it is a different way to do the work. And what we've discovered is that in the community, there are literally dozens and dozens of individuals and groups who are interested in what we want for our kids too. No surprise, we have many organizations throughout West Hartford that are interested in equity, but we weren't working together. And we might have had relationships with one or two here and there from our office or from the district level, but we weren't coordinated, and it wasn't really that we talked to each other, and some of them didn't know one another. And so one of the ways in which we've been able to build a strong partnership and improve what we do for kids is that we have built an organization that we've called One Community for Equity. We meet once a month, and it is parents and it's community members who really bring their expertise and their knowledge of their children and of their aspect of our community and their lived experiences to help inform our work. We bring up equity questions about how are we doing with the curriculum? Is it meeting the needs of kids? How are we doing in terms of our efforts towards STEM and trying to make sure that it's inclusive, that we have a good range of young people in those classes and on those tracks? What are we doing in terms of accountability work? What does it look like? How are we doing? Are we meeting the needs of all learners in the eyes of the families in our community? So we meet once a month and we talk about these issues, and they help us to think more clearly about what we may be missing. Again, vulnerable work. Sometimes the conversations are to push and a pull, but we have to talk. We have to find ways to work together to get to a place where all kids benefit, not just what we can think of in our offices. So the One Community efforts really have pushed our organization and pushed our educators to a better place. Mike?
Yep. Hi, all. Thank you. I want to echo Nordia's part about West Hartford being vulnerable. It's made it really easy to reach out. And with One Community, I'm there with a bunch of amazing groups like EDI, Parents of Color, Concerned Parents of Color, WASO there. And, I represent Make Us Visible. And we recently received funding to bring in Balfi, who is a children's book author and spoken word poet, for June for an in-person event. And when we got the funding, one of the first people I thought about were the West Hartford, partners here, like Scott and Roszena. So I reached out to them. But having these opportunities to bring in artists and authors of color into the classroom or to be seen within the community allows young students like my son to see that he could grow up to be a poet or a writer or an artist, and I think that's something true for all students of color, to be able to see yourself represented diversely. So other things that we've been working on have been this pilot program to actually introduce young students to artists of color within their communities so they could, again, see themselves represented. And let's see, I think on a personal note, what this makes me feel really comfortable with this type of partnership is sending my child to school. My son is in kindergarten, and I get excited when he comes home and tells me that today they learned about Diwali, or the Day of the Dead, or for Lunar New Year, or what's called the Autumn Fall Festival. His teacher asked for resources on this and books for this so she could read it to the class. It allows my son to feel seen, and him feeling seen means that he can be his true self in the classroom. I think recently he asked to bring in one of his favorite dinners for lunch the next day, which is Cambodian sausages, and to see the way his teacher reacted to his lunchbox. And I had to talk with my son about how someone might say his food might be smelly, because that happened to me and I had no roadmap to move through. So I stopped eating certain things. And so I had to talk with my son, and for him to bring this in and for me to feel comfortable telling his teacher, hey, he's bringing ethnic lunch in today. And for his teacher to come by and say like, hey, Cole, that looks great. And, he comes home, he's like, hey, no one said anything mean to me. And Mrs. G made me feel good about my food. I think that's where these partnerships lead to, is that openness.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
So, hi. So I had a chance to participate in a community conversation entitled Transformation of Unity Green, Where Do We Go From Here? And not only am I a member of this equity advancement team, I am also a parent of 2 young people who've graduated from West Hartford Public Schools and one who is a senior this year, as well, obviously, as a community member. And this particular community conversation was about a parcel of land in West Hartford that was named after a person who once enslaved other people. Through the work of some amazing community members, the owners of the parcel agreed to change the name to Unity Green. So West Hartford Public Schools coordinated with the Dodd Center at UConn Human Rights Institute and offered facilitator training, as well as a structure that supported the opportunity for us to host a dialogue inviting diverse perspectives on this topic. This process offered us the opportunity to increase our personal facilitation skills. It enabled us to learn how to be inclusive of diverse and divergent perspectives in a conversation. And the training and the community conversation included many stakeholders in our community. There were parents, there were students, there were educators, and other community partners. And this has resulted in a group of multi-generational people available in this community of West Hartford with these facilitation skills. And so it's a great resource for us as the community as a whole, as well as the school community. And I just have to put a plug in there for our students. I was really proud and humbled by our high school students who took the training and did the facilitation also. They were amazing. And I really feel like very proud of them and our community for doing this.
Thank you, Amy. So as I mentioned a bit ago, part of what we have tried to do is open dialogue around key areas of what we do to meet the needs of all kids. And it's easy for educators to sit in an office and to think about those things and to look at some of the data and make decisions, and ultimately then to try to move toward being more equitable school system. But it's another to then engage with our families and have them be part of that process. So one of the things that we've begun to do this year, this last school year, we began to include not just survey data and some of the more typical kinds of data, academic outcome data. We also added in focus groups from families, and we specifically tried to reach out to make sure that we had a good cross-section of our community to talk to us about how we're doing. Where are we meeting the needs of the kids? Where are we meeting the needs of families? How are we doing in terms of being a more equitable school system? We wanted parent voice and student voice, for that matter. To Amy's last point, we asked students as well to be part of those focus groups. And it was that we were collecting those pieces of information to go alongside of all the traditional data, like the school climate data. But it's also that we can then play back those voices for our teachers and for our school leaders to hear. There's a power in hearing people's voice. There's a power in hearing people's stories, and where you put a face on some of that data, that this came from a parent from our own school. This came from children from our own school. It adds a whole different layer of what it is that we then hopefully then do to move towards solutions that consider those voices, those faces, and all of the individuals in our community. So we're really, again, we're trying to make sure with each of these different efforts to open spaces for all of our parents to participate and be active partners in our work. So we're hoping to learn from you and be part of a dialogue about the work we're doing. We're, again, to what Dr. Haskins said at the beginning of our conversation, we're always growing, we're always learning, and Mr. Dunn as well, and a few people have alluded to the fact this is work that's ongoing, always work we hope to improve upon, but to share with others as well. How does family partnership serve as a lever for equity in your schools and in your setting? What is it doing to lead toward more equitable outcomes for kids? So we'd like to talk about what we're up to. We've heard some of what our efforts look like. We would also love to hear from you and to build connections. And the beauty of Friday Cafe is the networking opportunity to meet one another and hopefully then continue these conversations.
So again, I want to thank everyone so much. Dr. Haskins, Dr. Ratchford, and West Hartford thought leaders. I think my takeaway just personally was the benefit of really bringing rich resources in a community together and looking at things through a district lens, collective thinking. Dr. Haskins talked about an equity muscle, and I'm gonna quote her all the time because I think that's a piece where we're continuing to build our equity muscle. As Scott said, not only do we hear about new strategies, we get new strategies. I've written down a lot of different things that I will be using across the state as we look at family engagement statewide. Principal Dunn, did you have anything that you wanted to offer?
I would like to say that if anyone wants to hear more specifically about what Welcoming Schools team did at Wolcott, they can certainly reach out to me via email. We'd love to partner with you. We'd also love to learn from you. So we move forward when we're together.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I guess this is a thank you to all. Take the good ideas that you have, build your equity muscle, right? Continue to build that equity muscle as you look at family engagement and how it's in every aspect of what we do in all ways. And our wish for you is to be safe, healthy, and stay warm. So I thank you so much, everyone.